and I use variations of that depending, again, as I said, on the conditions. So many of you will know that I prefer to use a feeder. I think it gives you more versatility in terms of controlling the amount of bait that you're getting out there. You can obviously use different weights, and when you're casting a long way, as sometimes you have to do on the Trent, then big ground bait feeder really gets it out there, and you can hold bottom. I use anything from 3 ounces to 8 ounces and even 10 ounces at a time. I use Leroy White's feeders because I think they're really robust. They take a lot of hammer, and of course they also come close at the end, which is what I prefer. Once again, it's to control the amount of pellet that's coming out, or whatever I put in there, and just make sure that exactly the amount of feed I want is going in there. So onto the ring itself, I use a tadpole rig, semi running rig, so that if I do get a snag, and even actually for bite detection, I find it better than either a bolt rig or a full running rig. The other thing about the tadpole is that it's got quite a long sleeve, and that prevents tangles, which is really important, particularly in a big river where you're casting a long way. There's nothing worse than casting, sitting there for an hour, reeling in, finding out you haven't been fishing at all because your hook is actually round the line. That's also why I use a long sleeve actually on my hook length itself, which is attached by a quick release sleeve. Now I use those because I get through a lot of hook lengths every time I fish, and I'll tell you why in a moment. So continuing with the theme of not wanting to get tangled, I use quite a stiff a leader material for the hook length, which is effectively a combo rig, if you like. I use today I'm using 16-pound Fox Illusion because it's stiff, because it's really strong, and of course being fluorocarbon, it has the same refractive index as the water, so it's quite clear as well. Now again, the stiffness there is really to stop it tangling, but also I do think it actually aids bite detection, because at the end of it I have, as I said, a hybrid hook length where I'm just using some quite soft braid actually, and that's attached with, you probably can't see it on this, but by just a normal micro ring. You've got to know your knots well on that, because that is your weak link. Nothing worse than having a big barbel on, thinking it's fallen off, and find out that link has actually failed. So I do test that quite rigorously. That's only needs to be 3 or 4 inches at the most. And then what I tend to use, I've got I'm onto these new hooks now, well, they're new for me anyway, and they are the bear with me, the Corda Camera Crank 8s. They're an incredible hook because they actually seem to grip onto the fish to me, but what's really special about them is they're incredibly sharp. On the Trent, you get an awful lot of hook pulls if you're not really sure what you're doing. Partly that's because they're snatching at the bait, partly it's because you might have your distance between your feeder and the hook wrong, but partly it's so easy to blunt a hook. There's so many big stones out there, gravel, all sorts of rubbish, and I will test my hook tip, I take my point every single time that I cast, and if I'm not happy I'll change it. I change it anyway after each fish. Now it gets quite time consuming to build the rigs up, and quite expensive actually, but again, I'd rather get every fish that I can in. Incredibly sharp, these. And then of course the most important thing on the end, and no guesses about what I use, the famous Redemption Black, and that's about the only thing I will use on pretty much any venue, particularly this time of year. Just an incredible bait. That's a 16 miller, but I'll go down to a 14 or even a 12 if I need to. So that, quite simple, takes a little bit while to set up, but that's my go-to rig on most of the Trent venues. People do say, how long hook length do you use? And again, that depends. I've seen people use hook lengths as long as 6 foot. For me, that's just ridiculous. I don't see how you can really control things, and I think that's why you lose a lot of fish. There will be a few times I might use that, particularly in very rapid running water, because your feed is going to come down and settle about where the hook length is. But really, I'm use anything between 2 and 4 foot.